to the June 15th meeting of Troy City. I'm Marty Baker, President of Council. Please silence your electronic devices for the duration of this meeting. We'll begin with the invocation by Mayor Beamish, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
We can bow. Dear God, we thank you for joining us tonight in our deliberations. Please give us the guidance to do our best to do your will. Be with all those who serve our country and our first responders. Be with them and help us all to keep thinking peace in this world that we live in. And thank you, Lord, for giving us this great community we can all join in and share. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Oda?
Here.
Mr. Heath? Mr. Tremblay?
Here.
Mrs. Sneed? Here. Mr. Twist?
Here.
Mr. Kendall?
Here.
Mr. Swazer?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Move we excuse Mr. Heath. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to excuse Mr. Heath. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Heath is excused.
Move to excuse Mr. Clark.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Phillips and seconded by Mr. Twist to excuse Mr. Clark. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Clark is excused.
Mrs. Knight, please read a summary of the minutes of the June 1st meeting of Troy City Council.
Minutes of Council, June 1, 2015. Committee reports. Community and Economic Development Committee recommended that the ordinance number 012-2015 of rezoning be approved. Law and Ordinance Committee reported regarding recommending that Section 52104 of the ordinances be amended regarding sidewalk obstructions, damages, or injury, and also that legislation be prepared regarding painting of strawberries on city streets. There was a discussion that ensued on that subject. Resolution number R27, 2015, rescinding resolution number R46, 2014, and ODOT paving program was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R28, 2015, accepting the paint of strawberries affixed to limited areas of city streets, first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 012, 2015, rezoning part of inlot 9891 to R3B was given third title reading and was adopted. Ordinance number 013, 2015, amending section 521.04 of the ordinances related to sidewalks, first reading and adopted. Following various comments, council adjourned at 7:40 p.m.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move we accept the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Phillips to accept the minutes. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
We'll move on to committee reports. The first committee report is from the Personnel Committee. In the absence of Mr. Clark, who would like to read that? Mr. Twist, would you like to read that report, please?
The committee met on June 10th to consider the recommendation from the Troy Recreation Board to establish the FLSA exempt position of concessions/food and beverage manager to oversee all concessions operations at both Hobart Arena and the Troy Aquatic Park. Financial data indicates that bringing this function in-house would make concessions purchases more convenient for the customer and should positively impact concession revenues, with an estimate of $21,000 per year increase in net revenue once renovations are complete. It is the committee supports the recommendation of the Troy Recreation Board that all food and beverage concession operations at the Hobart Arena be performed by city staff, and we recommend that the legislation be prepared to amend the salary ordinance to establish the position of concession/food and beverage manager at the pay grade of MGT-1, a range of $47,994.95 to $56,233.02. This was respectfully submitted by Tom Kendall, myself, William Twist, and Chair Alan Clark.
Are there any questions from council on the report?
Madam President, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, Mr. Schwartz.
Is there a job description that goes with this?
Yes.
It's just not here,
Who's in
or?
the committee?
That's not something that the council approves. That's approved by the Civil Service Commission.
Okay. And will this individual also be overseeing the golf course concessions?
No, but in the future, though, we'll look at that in ways that we can maybe fold all that together eventually once they get their feet on the ground, so to speak.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Phillips?
How is this going to impact the nonprofits that are currently operating in these concessions?
As part of the reorganization, nonprofits will still be called on because we will need volunteers, as we've always needed for events. And so part of this will be to continue that part of the arrangement.
This is going to assist in establishing a real track record of income because we don't have any income records of what has been generated in the past. Is that
That's correct. Our contract's pretty basic. They pay us a
Flat fee.
flat monthly fee.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I had just a couple of questions. What is the course of action if this is not as financially beneficial as we planned it would be? And has the committee requested any kind of a mid-year report?
The committee did not request anything like that. This would probably be a report that I'm sure the rec board could submit, I would say, with 18 to 24 months, only because the first part of this will be during the renovation, which, as you'll recall, includes some major upgrades to the concession areas, some efficiencies, some new kitchen equipment, some reorganization of those areas and how things work. And then, of course, you'd want to have some post-renovations track record and performance before coming to the council. I would imagine that any budget year, any budget discussions could include, how's that position doing, and do we want to continue to use it, or do we want to go back to our old way of doing it? Can say that the consultant that we used when we analyzed prior to approving this renovation project was fairly conservative in his estimates, and it was fairly apparent to him that we could, I guess, profit and keep more of the revenue in-house by bringing it all together, as well as including TAP, the pool, and their operations.
Thank you. The next report is from the Streets and Sidewalks Committee and Chairman Bobby Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee met on June 10th regarding increasing the authorization for the North Market Street, Piqua, Troy Road, Troy Urbana Road intersection realignment project. The project was authorized at not to exceed a $780,300 amount. The project was recently completed with total billings from the contractor in the amount of $806,422.20. We were advised that the overage was due to less than favorable soil conditions, which resulted in instability issues and the need for significantly higher quantities of fill material. This was due to no borings being done in samples of the road material underneath. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared increasing the authorization for the North Market Street, Piqua Troy Road, Troy Urbana Road realignment project from $780,300 to the amount of $806,422.20. so that final payment can be made to the contractor. We do support emergency legislation, as I stated above, that the project has been completed and inspected. This is respectfully submitted by Mr. Heath, Mrs. Snee, and myself as chair.
Are there any questions from council on this report?
I have a question, Madam President.
Mrs. Oda?
I noted in the packet from council, or to council, the visibility issue that has been brought up by residents. Does this fix that visibility issue?
No, this has nothing to do with that. That is an elevation of a difference of 3 feet. It is to engineering standards. Much like any other stop sign that you come to, we do have the stop bar in place at the appropriate location, and as state law instructs, once they stop, then they can move forward. Once you move forward, before you get into the intersection and become a problem, you can see the visibility is there to the north, or coming from the north.
I had come through that intersection myself, so I was glad I wasn't the only one noticing a visibility problem there.
It is, it may be a little more apparent just because the intersection is, I guess, wider open. I've noticed that too, but then on virtually any stop sign that you come to, you have the same dilemma, just not as apparent as it is at that intersection, especially this time of the year when you do have the crops
are
coming up.
higher, yeah. Okay. I just wondered if that was taken into this.
We did talk to the engineer about it and confirmed that it was done to specs and to standards, and it was. And we would have been concerned had we not been able to move forward after the stop bar and be able to see without going into traffic. Then we would have looked at some reconstruction.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Anyone else with questions? Okay. Thank you. Was there any other committee reports to come before council?
Yes, ma'am.
Utilities, okay. The last report then is from the Utilities Committee and Chairman Doug Tremblay.
Thank you, Madam President. This committee met on June 10th to consider if Troy should negotiate jointly with other cities in the region for one price schedule for the next street lighting contract. Recent negotiations have been conducted by the Miami Valley Communications Council. MVCC is willing to negotiate the next contract on behalf of the participating communities and has requested that the communities that intend to be part of the joint negotiations indicate that by July 15th. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared expressing the intent of the City of Troy to negotiate jointly with other cities in the region on one price schedule under which street lighting services shall be provided. Due to the time frame in which the intent is to be transmitted, committee supports emergency legislation. This is respectfully submitted by Mr. Clark, Mr. Twist, and myself as chair.
Are there any questions from council on this report? Thank you, Mr. Tremblay. We now open the meeting to citizen comments. There is a 2-minute time limit at this point in the meeting, and Mr. Kerber is our timekeeper. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments related to any of the agenda items this evening? Seeing none, then we'll move on to resolutions and ask Mrs. Knight to read Resolution R29, 2015.
Resolution number R29, 2015. Resolution increasing the authorization for the North Market Street, Piqua Troy Road, Troy Urbana Road intersection realignment project and declaring an emergency. This has now a total authorization of $806,422.20. First reading.
Is there any discussion from council on the resolution?
Move for suspension.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Kendall, to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Twist to adopt the resolution. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed? Yes. Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Move on to ordinances and ask Mrs. Knight to read ordinance 014, 2015.
Ordinance number 014, 2015, ordinance amending ordinance number 041, 2012, as amended by ordinance number 07, 2013, fixing salaries and wages of certain employees of the City of Troy, Ohio. This establishes the position and wage for concessions, food, and beverage manager. First reading.
Is there any questions or discussion from council on the ordinance?
Move for suspension.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed? Yes. Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Schweizer?
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Phillips and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to adopt the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed? Yes. Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Schweizer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, please read ordinance 015, 2015.
Ordinance number 015, 2015, an ordinance expressing the city's intent to negotiate jointly with other cities in the region on one price schedule under which electric light services shall be furnished to the residents of the city for the purpose of street lighting. This is the first reading.
Any questions from council?
Move to suspend.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Schweizer and seconded by Mr. Twist to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed? Yes. Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Schweizer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Twist to adopt the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Sneed? Yes. Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Schweizer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
That completes the business portion of tonight's meeting. Mrs. Knight, are there any communications or announcements?
No, they're not.
Mayor Beamish, do you have any comments for us this evening?
Well, thank you, Madam President. I have a number of event items I need to share with everybody so that everybody knows what's going on. First of all, we've had a wonderful kickoff for Farmers Market, and that will continue through the summer months. And we also have a number of concerts coming up. You've been reading about the concert at the Hobart Arena. That'll be the U.S. Army Band, a field band. That's a free concert, 7 o'clock at Hobart Arena. That follows with a litany of June activities, starting with June 25th. The Cincinnati Symphony, a big hit, is coming to town. That's a Thursday night, and that'll be on Prouty Plaza. Then on the 26th, the next day, Prouty Plaza, will be the Eric Girardi Band. They're a pretty popular band that have another good turnout. Sunday features the Troy Civic Band that kicks off their season of activities. That again will be on Prouty Plaza. I want to talk a little bit about down the road because there's maybe some confusion with the U.S. Army field band, because on July 2nd, if you remember last year, we also had the U.S. Army National Guard band, and they will again be doing a free concert down on Prouty Plaza on July 2nd. That precedes the fireworks on July 4th. I do want to call your attention, each of you received a special invitation for a $12 ticket. If you've never been to the Schuster Performing Arts Center, it's a beautiful center. They've been featuring communities in the Miami Valley. Troy will be featured on July 10th at 8 o'clock at the Schuster Center. Neil Gettleman will be conducting. It'll be a Jeans In Classic ensemble concert, symphony, Dayton Philharmonic Orchestra will be there. $12. And I don't know if any of you have been down at the Schuster Center, but $12 tickets, and I understand they're orchestra level seats. Focus just on those of us in the Troy community at $12. You can purchase that, it's cash only, and you can get up to 4 tickets. You can get the tickets here at City Hall, or you can go to the Hobart Arena box office and get those tickets. I want to share that because that's something that's open to everybody. And again, if you haven't been to Schuster, $12 ticket is a wonderful price to see that facility. And I just received word, speaking of our military, the Air Force Band, they've reduced their numbers. Their Systems Go band will be with us in August. So now we will have the U.S. Army bands, and now we will have the Air Force band on August 23rd, 7 o'clock, Crowdy Plaza. So we've got a lot to offer in Troy, and most, if not all, these activities are free concerts. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Titterington, do you have any comments this evening?
Thank you, ma'am. Just to follow up on the July 10th concert at Schuster, it is for Troy residents. However, we will offer them for our township folks, as well as really anybody in Miami County, because they do want to share that with as broad an audience as possible. Preference to Troy. My understanding is that if they give us a stack of tickets, if we sell those tickets, they will give us some more to sell. So it is a unique opportunity, and at a great discount over the regular purchase price. The other that I would mention is, since we do not have another meeting until then, July 3rd is a Friday. It is the Friday before Independence Day, and city offices are closed. Recycling and refuse will be on the normal schedule, so if you're on a Friday pickup, put it out Thursday night or Friday morning early, and we will get it as usual. And that's all I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Kerber, any comments this evening?
No, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Do any council members have any comments this evening?
Yes, Madam President.
Mr. Schweizer.
I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Doug Stone on a very, very successful Troy Strawberry Festival, and all the volunteers that helped make that event possible, and the city as well. If you were downtown on Saturday or Sunday and saw the crowds, it was easily as busy as Mumford & Sons, and everybody just pulled together and did a great job. So I heard there was a lot of sellouts very quickly. So they all did a wonderful job.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else on council? Is there any comments from city staff this evening? Anyone else in the audience have any comments? Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. Have a safe and peace-filled week. Meeting adjourned.